Mike Graham, how are you, my old son?
Very good to see you, thank you. Very nice.
You had Nigel Farage here this morning.
We did.
And I made the point, to me this is so abhorrent, it's not really about politics, and I think that text does a really good job, because it says it's not just, you know, Starmer, it's not just the Tories, it goes way, way back. But Starmer's in the dock because he tried to excuse it by saying, oh, it's all far right. Again, just a really bad decision. It's like the man doesn't get politics. I loved listening to you this morning. You had Farage on, and he'd done an interview, Starmer, hadn't he, with Beth Rigby. Tell me about that.
Well, he did an interview with her where she asked him, first of all, you know, do you regret using that phrase? You know, the far right bandwagon.
What did he say?
And he basically said, well, of course, I didn't mean it to be about the ordinary people of the country. I meant it to be about the politicians.
Right.
So he didn't say that he was sorry he said it, and he didn't shrink from saying it. And he said, I just get fed up with politicians who jump on bandwagons and just make it all about politics, which is effectively what he's doing. Because he's now jumping on the same bandwagon, whether it's far right.
Pressurised into jumping on it.
Doing it because he knows the government of the day has to do what the will of the people is, and the will of the people on this one is to have an inquiry. And he was wrong in the first place in January, and he was wrong in February and March and April until now, when he suddenly realised, oh my God, we better have an inquiry. Then he was asked, what's the greatest thing you've done? What's your best achievement since you've been in office since July of last year? You know what he said?
Surviving a year?
He said, well, we promised 2 million more NHS appointments, and we've brought you 3 million, which clearly is not true, because anybody who is waiting for an operation or waiting for an appointment and the NHS knows that it's not moving, it's not working.
It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And
then when he was asked about what was his biggest mistake since he's been in, he basically said he didn't really think he'd made any mistakes, but he perhaps could have communicated the message a bit better.
So he doesn't think that the pensions thing's a mistake, or turning down a child at the
even though he's reversed it.
Or the child inquiry into raping, and he's reversed that.
Yeah, he doesn't think that was a mistake. Right.
Apparently. So you had Nigel on this morning, and you said to him, what did he think was, this is brilliant by the way, Keir Starmer's biggest mistake that he's ever made? This is Nigel Farage on Morning Glory this morning.
I asked him, you know, what was his biggest mistake?
Yeah.
Do you know what his biggest mistake was? Going into politics.
Yes.
And why do I say that? Because actually, if you go into politics, you do it because you believe in something.
Yeah.
You think there's a course of action that needs to be taken that you think will make the country better. This bloke doesn't believe in a single thing other than the niceness of human rights law, international law, and the North London set. And what you're seeing with his premiership, you're seeing somebody who wanted to be Prime Minister for the sake of being Prime Minister, not with what he could do with it.
I mean, he hits out at politicians. He says, what did he say? I don't like politicians who do nothing but spout about grooming gangs. You had a chance in January to have a national inquiry, and you did nothing.
Yes, exactly right. And everybody knows that he was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. He never stopped talking about it. He hasn't mentioned it much this week, has he?
No.
He doesn't go, oh, of course, you might remember when I was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service and I committed an awful lot of these horrible, ghastly rape gang members to prison because I cracked down on it. Well, he didn't. Yes, he did prosecute some, but the number of prosecutions went up dramatically when the next head of the Crown Prosecution Service came in. So yes, he did some of it, but he also didn't prosecute an awful lot of people because he called the witnesses unreliable. And so they didn't go through with the prosecution. So an awful lot of people, an awful lot of victims were left without any justice under Keir Starmer's reign.
And that, to me, on a human level, is one of the biggest and most heinous things about this, because this was working-class girls, maybe from fractured families, maybe with some issues, socially,
some of them
mentally.
in care.
Some of them from care, with no support network at all, who have been used and abused, and society has turned a blind eye. And you know, the reason we can absolutely hone in on Starmer and why he's such a hypocrite is because he had a chance to do something. I was on air when Jess Phillips is another one, she's in the front, went in the chamber just before the break for Easter and went there, we're not going to have a national inquiry, we're going to have, and shot off, right? Jess Phillips has spent her life talking about women's rights, and I want to stick up for women who are stalked. I want to make sure that women's safety, blah, 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 right? What about young girls' safety who are being raped? Why did you not come out with that, Jess? You come from Birmingham. Your seat is in Birmingham.
And when, after the event in January, when everybody in Labour said, we don't need a national inquiry, we've already had one, there's no point in worrying about it, you know, we better get on with just implementing the recommendations of the last one, you know, suddenly when he said, just before he went off to Canada, let's have a national inquiry, she went very quiet. She didn't say anything. She didn't come out and say, well, hang on a minute, you told us we didn't need one back in January.
So a politician with any moral compass would say, hold on a minute, I'm not working for a man who changed his mind on something that matters to me so strong, which proves that even those people who purport to be all about, you know, what's right and what's wrong, are just interested in climbing the greasy pole.
Yeah, and they'll say anything that they're told to say. Don't forget, they had a vote in the Commons, and they all voted against having a national inquiry. So the idea that they're now...
There was a whip, wasn't there? Three-line whip. They were told to vote against it.
To vote against it. And the idea that they're all now punching the air going, we must have a national inquiry. You just think, well, do you think the people of this country are stupid? You think they don't know what's going on here? You people don't care about having a national inquiry. You just think it might keep everybody a bit happier.
I don't know what you think. I've been accused of going overboard a little bit on this, but I don't think the British people are going to stomach that. I don't think they'll stomach a whitewash. I don't think they will stomach delays. I think this is probably one of the biggest disgraces. I mean, we've talked about the post office scandal. That was horrendous. Yeah. But I mean, I've got a father on at 6 o'clock whose daughter was groomed, raped, passed around, slid into drug addiction and died at 29. This man has spent years, Tony Sutton, trying to get justice, but has never been listened to and has been vilified and called racist. I've got a voice note. I want you to hear this. Berry, Carl on the grooming scandal. Go.
I will never, ever be embarrassed to be British. I'm embarrassed of this government. I'm embarrassed of the last government. I'm embarrassed of the police, but I'll never, ever be embarrassed of my country. I love Great Britain, and one day it will be great again. And the reason it'll be great again, because all these people that have done this over the years to these children and who have turned a blind eye will be brought to book. So no, I'll never be ashamed to be British, because at the end of the day, these people committing this aren't British. I'm not doing it. You're not doing it. So why should we be ashamed?
Interesting point.
It is a good point. And I think the point is that people have now seen that there is people power in this country. You know, we've been riding this particular story for a very long time, and people have had enough. And I think, you know, somebody sent me a message today and finished with that, the people have had enough. And I think that's a new kind of mantra for all of us to say, enough is enough. You know, we've taken it and taken it and taken it, and we're not taking it anymore.
It's almost like
now it looks as though they're weak. The government are now running scared because look at what they've done. They've reversed the pension allowance.
Farmers next, any money.
Yeah, because they've seen the power that people have. Because they're finished if they don't do what we want.
Which makes me think that you know, it's almost like the British people have had a gutful. It's almost as if, and I said it yesterday, like with COVID and the cost of living crisis and the expense scandal and everything that's gone on, opening your doors to people from Ukraine, all the stuff, everything that's going on in the world. And I keep coming back to it. You live your life correctly, you do everything right, and you see yourself at the back of the queue. Another voice note, Jack on the grooming gangs, go.
How can you even need a report into whether you need a national inquiry for something that morally needs to be done out of the honesty that our young girls and vulnerable are looked after and given every bit of opportunity to have a better life? It just doesn't make sense. Can you make sense of it?
Not at all, mate. The other thing that came out from Yvette Cooper, which was blindingly obvious to anybody here and anybody with a brain cell, was that a large proportion of these asylum seekers coming over, and today we announced until 40,200 have come over since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, the man that was going to smash the gangs. They've got no bleeding plan either. A large proportion of these men coming over are not only committing crimes, but the front page of the Telegraph was interesting today as well.
Yeah, they're committing sex crimes. Last year, the figures and these are proper figures from the Ministry of Justice, these are people who have been convicted of sex crimes. A third of them have come from asylum-seeking countries, and a further, I think, 8% of them, sorry, a quarter of them have come from asylum-seeking countries, a further 8%, which makes it a third altogether, have come from countries where they haven't said where they're from. So they're basically asylum seekers. A quarter of sex offences in this country last year caused by asylum seekers. It's as clear as the nose on your face. Nigel Farage said it today. That's the link that will kill off Keir Starmer and this Labour government, because they have encouraged it, it's got worse under them, and we're now actively actually allowing people to come into this country and rape and sexually assault our women.
And do you know what's really interesting, having worked with you for 2 years? When we've said this for a long time, we have been vilified by many, many people online, some nearer to home, right? Which is fair, people have opinions. But actually, where I think he is so wrong, Starmer, is it's not far right, Mikey. That language is truthful. It's common sense. If you have people, illegal aliens, coming into this country who have no... And I'm sick to death of the rubbish spouted by the left. Oh, well, they're not escaping war-torn countries. We're done with that. They're coming into a country that is wiping their backside, right, making it too easy for them to come in, and then they're committing heinous crimes. And under the guise of an ideology of, oh, we should all live together, we're turning a blind eye to that. But hold on a second, I'm going to say it again. Lucy Connolly wrote something not very nice, and I don't condone any of it, about the Muslim community, and is in jail for 31 months. Can people explain that?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's
completely
imbalanced.
Nonsensical. And if they've got any brains, they'll get her out of jail as well. I think she's due to possibly be released in August. But, you know, if they had any brains whatsoever, which they don't have, they would let her out.
Do you think, Nigel, did he give any take on how he would stop the boats? Was there anything in your
reforms
conversation?
policy is that they will turn them around. They will physically turn them around and take them back to France. Now, the niceties of how you do that, I mean, there are very many different ways you can do it. There are boats that can tug them. There are, you know, possibly naval vessels that can be put in charge of them. You can put the special boat service in. There's any number of ways you could do it. But effectively, he said, it's basically our fault. He said, you can't keep blaming the French. It's our fault. People come here because it's a nice soft touch. They know they're going to get looked after. They know they're going to get free stuff. They're going to get benefits. They're going to get taken on trampolining lessons. They're going to get taken to football matches. They're going to be treated better than the people who are actually born here and make a living here and pay taxes here. And so that's the draw. And as long as that's the draw, they're going to keep coming.
But how can a politician not see that the draw is the reason that they're all coming in the first place?
I don't understand what politicians think and how they think. It's impossible to know how they come up with some of the rubbish they come out with, which is clearly just fantasy in their head.
You can tell. I mean, what's the name of that man we just did Plank with? Rafe who?
Rafe Heidel-Manku.
Amazing. He said it's really, really... I mean, he said it's really, really simple. I wouldn't, he said, with the help of the Royal Navy, let any single person who cannot prove that there's a reason they should be here set foot on British soil. They should be put on boats, right, transferred to and taken somewhere like Georgia or the Falkland Islands or the Ascension Islands or somewhere off Scotland in a detention centre with no trappings and no brilliance, and that would very soon send a message, a bit like Trump did it on the Mexican border. People were going, oh, hold on a second, there's no point in going because we won't be able to screw the Americans because we're being screwed. Aren't
exactly.
We?
Absolutely
Every single day.
And there's any number of varieties of, you know, of possible things that we could do. I mean, I said this years ago, Rafe said it today, you know, especially during COVID, when they were still coming, by the way, and the only way you could get to Britain when there was a travel ban was on a dinghy. I mean, that's how ridiculous it was. The people were still coming in. And, you know, forget about whatever the threat was in terms of what they might be carrying with them. Put them on the disused, you know, cruise ships. The cruise ships weren't being used at that time. They're all secure. You can put them all in locked rooms. You can put them in a pretty secure area, and you can sail the boat off to the Falkland Islands or off to the Ascension Islands or some British, you know, territory abroad. And they're on a boat. They're not actually on British soil. That's the start. And do you know,
until the last breath goes out of me, I will never be able to stand, which is why I will keep fighting, right? There are politicians and people in authority who are prepared to come on stations and shows, not on this, never are they prepared to do this, and say, but we need to consider people's feelings. They're escaping war-torn countries. They're this, they're that, the other, right? Listen. But they don't give a toss about 8-year-old white girls being raped. That's what I cannot.
I know.
As a father, that just doesn't resonate with me. That is morally repugnant to me.
It's baffling. It is baffling. But, I mean, you hear them even now on other outlets, not this one, obviously, but you hear them even now saying things where you can clearly tell that the person speaking thinks that all immigrants are good and basically all British white people are bad. Because we're racist, we're small-minded, you know, we're little Englanders, you know, we don't have a broader view of the world, we don't like foreign food, we don't like garlic, all these kind of stereotypes about people, you know, who go on holiday to Benidorm. You know, they hate the British people, these lefties.
But they all want to come here.
But of course they all want to come here, but they love immigration. They want everybody who comes here from another country to be told how wonderful they are.
Well, maybe D-Day's coming, because what they're doing is forgetting the people that elected them are actually fed up to the back teeth of being treated like second-class citizens. Plank of the Week drops Friday. It's a brilliant one, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Absolutely brilliant. And Mike back with Morning Glory tomorrow morning.
Thank
you, bud.
Not at all.
We had dinner last night. We had a couple of bottles.
Couple of Swifties.
A couple of Swifties.
A couple of steaks, and a couple of people who came up and said how much they enjoyed what we were doing, which is always nice.
It was very, very nice. Mike Graham, the legend, back tomorrow morning with Morning Glory. I nearly got that right.